welcome to Sure Things. Today's format's yet a bit different again. I'm in the studio, and my guest today is our first selectman from Westbrook, Noel Bishop, who's joining us via phone. Hello, Noel.
Hello, Mary. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for a conversation about Westbrook. Of course, I'm a little biased because I'm a Westbrook resident, and I loved what it says on the website, that Westbrook is the jewel of the shoreline. A little bit biased, but that's okay. I thought we could start, Mr. Bishop, by you telling us a little bit about your background and experience as first selectman here in Westbrook.
Mary, thank you for putting me on the show. I'd be happy to talk a little bit about Westbrook. My background, I graduated from Yale University several years ago. My first experience was the dean at Quinnipiac University. Then I went on. I was executive director of the Connecticut State Dental Association for about 15 years, and now I've been in this position as Westbrook's first selectman for almost 14 years now.
14 years, that's amazing. So you certainly have the experience to talk about Westbrook and all the changes that we have gone through as such a small town. How many residents do we have in Westbrook?
Mary, we have approximately 7,000 during the year, but in the summer months, because of the shoreline community, we have about an additional 4,000 or 5,000 people that come. So in the summertime, around 12,000.
12,000, I see. Yeah, it's such a small community, and it does swell with the warmer weather. That's for sure. I was checking out the website and looking at all the commissions and departments we have. It's a very thorough information there, and I was just curious. How do you keep track? How do you keep tabs on all that's going on, whether it's a building commission or the wetlands, or how do you keep your handle on all that?
Actually, it's not too difficult, first of all, because I'm here every day. But more importantly, we have a fantastic municipal staff. They do a great job. They're here every day, and they also coordinate with all of our boards and commissions. The minutes come through. I read them. We have an excellent website. But because we are small, our communication structure is very thorough, very comprehensive, and so we're in touch with each other on a daily basis.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I certainly needed, as I said, when I was looking at all the services and all the commissions and everything we have going on. There's a lot happening there. Yeah, I wondered, many of my guests recently, we've talked about, of course, the impact COVID has had on different services. And I wondered from the town perspective, when things started happening last March, what was the impact for you in your position as leader of the town?
It was a very significant challenge, but I have the benefit of, first of all, as you know, Connecticut's not a big state. We have 169 towns in our state, and it's divided up so that we have what are called regional councils of government. And in our shoreline area, 17 towns belong to that. And the reason I mention that structure is I happen to be on the executive committee of that board. We meet every month, and we keep each other informed. It does not matter whether we're Democrats or independents or Republicans. We communicate constantly. And our challenges in Westbrook are no different than any of our other shoreline towns. Yes, it was a major issue. I would say Governor Lamont and his staff have also, Mary, done a great job. Yeah. There are weekly calls the governor and his staff has with our health director, myself, our emergency management directors. So the communication structure is very good. The governor has issued a number of executive orders relative to COVID-19 and its impact. So my point is we're all in touch with each other. Fortunately, because we're a small state, we know each other, we have great resources, and so whenever we make major decisions about what we're going to do with businesses, whether they should be open or shut, we have the benefit of that great communication structure that starts at the top with Governor Lamont.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful piece of information to know too about the joint effort with all 17 of the towns that are involved in that kind of consortium that you have and meeting. Did you say once a week you meet?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
The governor has calls usually on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock. If he's not on the staff, his commissioner of health is. But the great thing is all we have to do is pick up a telephone. We can call one of our legislators. We can call any member of the governor's staff. I can call 18 other first selectmen or mayors in the local area. So the communication structure is very strong. We all have the same challenges, and that is some of our small businesses are struggling. So when are they open? When are they closed? What are the restrictions? All that information is really at our fingertips. So again, it goes back to the fact that when you have that kind of communication structure, we happen to have a very strong health department here, our director of health, emergency management systems. They have all done a great job in communicating. We send out messages almost on a daily basis. You can go on our website. We send out blast emails on social media. So we're doing everything we can to constantly keep our public informed about what's happening. But it's a challenge. There's no question about it.
Yes, and I do appreciate that amount of information that gets out there, because I do see on social media those blasts that go out. Somebody posts those, and it's interesting to be able to keep up with everything. I do wonder too with the economic impact of the pandemic, and as you mentioned, some of the small businesses that are struggling. Do you find that financially Westbrook is supported? Do we get state aid as on a basis that's pretty comparable to the other towns, and are we at a disadvantage because we're so small when it comes to the economic impact?
Mary, these are very good questions. The answer is we're not at a disadvantage because we're a small town. I think the governor and our legislators have made it very clear that they want to continue the amount of municipal aid we've had for our small towns. And there's several different aid programs, which I will not go into, but I do not anticipate any of those aid programs changing. We depend very much upon that aid to balance our budgets, and it helps us keep our taxes down. So I don't anticipate any major changes, at least in the foreseeable future.
Oh, that's good to know, and it's good to know, as you said, with Governor Lamont now even opening a little bit more, so that will help the businesses as well, because it's difficult to in any town. It's not just Westbrook. It's difficult to go by and see the number of businesses that are struggling or have closed for a period of time or have closed and might not be able to open up. But I noticed though still Westbrook still has some improvement plans that seem to be moving forward. Is that true during pandemic, or have we been able to continue with some of the plans?
Mary, I have to say this to you, because we are small, because we have, I think, a very conservative budget with money in our fund balance, that we're able to continue the services throughout the pandemic. And let me be very specific about two areas. First of all, the demand upon our social services, upon our senior center, upon our health department, they are greatly increased during this period of time. So our staff is constantly reaching out. In terms of services, I can illustrate one thing that because we have a strong fund balance, we're in the second year now of replacing the jetties. There's 8 of them in number along Seaside Avenue. One was replaced last year. We had 2 that were just completed. But we just had about a week and a half ago, we made a decision, because we had the money in our budget, because the people doing the current jetties are willing to stay at a reduced cost, so that we're now in the process of completing yet a 4th jetty in this fiscal year. I say this because our fund balance is very strong, because our budgets are conservative. So when these issues come along, we don't have to wait and go back to our taxpayers, say, in May or June to ask for more money. So our projects are going forward. We have not had any diminishing of services whatsoever. Let's go back to COVID-19. The biggest challenge that we're all facing right now is the fact that we are not getting the vaccine. I don't mean we as Westbrook, but our state is trying to get about 45 to 50,000 vaccines a week. That is not enough to get everybody vaccinated. So the governor decided 2 weeks ago that the age cohort of 75 and plus, they would get vaccinated first. Secondly would be people 65 and older, and then teachers and other staff. So the fact of the matter is, that's our challenge with COVID. It's not about delivering the services to our community. We're depending upon the amount of vaccine we're getting from the state. That's the number one issue right now. That's where most of our calls are coming in. How can I get vaccinated? When can I get vaccinated? And what's the process? That's our challenge regarding COVID at this point in time. I
can see where that would be a challenge, as you said, for Westbrook and for many. to get those vaccines is on everybody's mind, and the challenge of signing up for those too, as I've heard. And besides the COVID, because that has, I can imagine the services are still in place, which is great. And you mentioned the jetty project, which is going ahead, which is great to know. We enjoy our shoreline so much in the summertime, or anytime we enjoy our shoreline. But I also wondered, in town, we have town center. Are there certain projects that are going on in Westbrook in town?
Yes, let's talk about the town center. And I reference this by going back and talking a little bit about what's called a plan of conservation and development. The state requires that every one of our 169 towns has to, every 10 years, have an updated plan of conservation and development. Our leadership is an example of what volunteers can do, and it's almost totally volunteer driven. Our planning commission and others have now engaged a consultant for the past almost year now. We've been putting together that plan. There have been many opportunities for the public to comment on that plan. And the reason I say that to you is a lot of that plan, when we survey the public, is what are we doing about our town center? How can we revitalize it? How can we attract more businesses there? How can we make it the kind of town center that a lot of towns have? So we have a plan to do that. It's high on our citizens list. And one of the issues there is what we do with wastewater. When you're going to have businesses there, they need a place to put the wastewater. So we've engaged a consultant to work with us, and this is some money that we received from a grant. We're doing some testing to see where, in fact, that wastewater could go. We do not have currently, most of our system is on septic systems in the town. Yeah. So that's a major initiative. I believe that we're moving in the direction that we'll have those plans in place, and we'll take that back to our community, hopefully sometime this spring. But yes, if we survey our individuals in this town about Westbrook, what do they want most, besides keeping the conservative budgets, the viability of our community, is to do something with our town center.
Yeah. I noticed that we had a survey, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, we had a survey, and some of that focused on the sidewalks too. And that was a big initiative. I think it was a few years ago, because I see there's work on the sideways going from what looks like almost from the rail station down into town, which looks like that also would help build the community.
I want to comment on that. I appreciate you've really done your homework, and I can tell you care very deeply, as most of us do, about Westbrook. Yeah. Yes, we did that survey, and in that survey, over 70% of our residents responded, and they told us where they wanted the sidewalks, and we're proceeding with that. Yeah. Let's go back to when you talked about state aid. The sidewalk that you see from the train station to the center town, we received money. It was about $125,000 or $128,000, called a connectivity grant. So basically, the state paid for that. In the meantime, we've received yet another grant that's ultimately going to take the sidewalks from the center town, and they're going to go all the way down to the Singing Bridge and beyond, almost to the Clinton town line. So yes, the sidewalk plan for the next 3 or 4 years is there. We're getting grant money for that, and we've set aside money in our capital project. So when we talk a little bit further on about the future, developing those sidewalks is very important to Westbrook.
All right, good. Well, thank you so much. We'll be back with Mr. Noel Bishop after our short break. Be right back.
Keep on keeping on, lady. Keep on keeping on, yeah. You expect me to stop living? No, you're telling me giving. I gotta do. Oh, your baby gonna keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Connecticut, for doing your part to stop the spread of COVID-19, for wearing your masks, washing your hands, and keeping your distance. So keep it up, Connecticut. We've come too far to go back.
It's a beautiful day out here, sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it, let's go.
Hello, welcome back to Sure Things, and my guest today via Zoom on the phone is Mr. Noel Bishop, First Selectman for the lovely town of Westbrook. Welcome back, Noel.
Thank you, Mary.
So right before the break, we were talking about the sidewalks in Westbrook, and especially as you were explaining to us the funding that went into that sidewalk that's from our beautiful train station into town. And I wanted to follow that up with going ahead and talking about some of the future projects and visions for Westbrook and for the center.
Let's talk about some of the future projects. Reiterate, the developing of the sidewalks for our community is very important. Secondly, the continued fixing the jetties. We will have 5 of them done. We have 3 more to do. I think that will be supported in our capital plan. Let me talk about something that's underway, very important to this town. In our library, we've developed what's called a library community room. We're naming that after our retired Lou Daniels, our superb employee. We're naming it the Lou Daniels Technology Room. I say that because it's not just for the library. That'll be open to our school system for people to use it. That's an example of some very careful planning that we're doing. I think overall, besides, and I could go on and list a lot of other projects. You know, we work a lot. I work a lot with the local Chamber of Commerce, the Middlesex Chamber, to develop our businesses in the town are very important. I happen to also be on the 9-Town Transit Board. Those are the little blue and green buses that you go around. Those are being expanded, and we're joining with the Middletown Transit District. I say that because more and more we need to get away from people just commuting in their own cars. We need to provide transportation for people to go, whether it's up to Middlesex College, whether it's to go to Middletown, whatever it is. So those are all projects that are very important to us. I would say the most important objective going forward is the fact that we have to maintain our historical identity as a community. We are encouraging families to relocate here and to put their children in our excellent school system. We have to maintain the most competitive property taxes we can, and we have to perhaps, and we talked about this earlier at the opening of the show, Mary, to get our volunteers involved. Let me give you an example. One of the reasons that we can deliver so many services in this town is we rely upon volunteers. All of the major decisions in Westbrook are really made by volunteers. Some of us, including myself, happen to be very fortunate and to be elected by the public, and we feel very honored to serve in this role. But our roles are essentially very dependent upon the volunteers. Our volunteer fire department, for example, we only have 3 paid individuals, and they're all stipends. I think the chief gets maybe $9,000 or $10,000 a year. But we have over 60 firemen. They're all volunteers. So unlike some towns, we don't have a paid fire department. We only have 7 constables. So they continue to deliver our services, to get those volunteers engaged, to keep our staff, as I said, as consistent as we can. So we have to maintain that balance. We cannot continue to add staff. We can't have a paid fire department. We can't do these things because our tax structure would simply go through the roof. The last thing I'd like to say is the following. If we looked at 2 years ago, real estate would take months for a house to sell. That's not true. Many of our properties are selling within a week or 2. Why? Because we have people coming from New York City, perhaps people coming from Fairfield County. They want to come to our small towns. They like that atmosphere. They like the fact that our taxes are less than they are other places. So that's a very encouraging sign, is to get people to come to our town, to relocate here, to put their children in our school systems, and to get their families involved as volunteers. That's our challenge, but that's what makes me very optimistic. That's the direction we're going in.
Yeah, that is very optimistic, and I think it is wonderful for the town of Westbrook because, as you said, we've noticed people, the housing market, as you said, has really picked up, and houses aren't staying on the market very long. I did have the new director of the library on too, and he talked about that room that you talked about for technology, which sounds like it's going to be a real hub for the community, which I'm very excited about as well. And I think that's important to support the technology and the growth in our town. Do you think something like the senior center, and I don't know if there's any plans for anything different with that, do you have any idea, or are there any plans for that senior center that's currently in Town Hall to stay there? Or because I know that's a huge resource as well for people.
The answer is it's going to stay here.
Yep.
And even though, let's go back to March, I'm not aware of any senior centers, primarily because of the age cohort, that have been open because of COVID-19. But during that period of time, our senior director has been here every single day. She's reaching out to seniors. She goes and helps get shopping for them. She has the food delivered. In this particular time right now, because there's been some frustration of people getting registered through the state system. It's called VAMS to get the vaccine. She and her staff are personally calling. It's in Westbrook. I really did not realize this, quite frankly, till last week when I mentioned to you we have about 7,000 people here during the year.
Yeah.
900 of those 7,000 people are over the age of 70. Think about what that means for our community. Think of the responsibility that has for those calls. So yes, our senior center, while it cannot be open to the public now, they're more busy than they ever have been before. So when we have these particular issues like COVID-19, they're able to get on the phone, they're able to reach out. So that's a great resource for this community, and it will continue to be one.
And that's great to know too, Mr. Bishop. I didn't realize how involved the senior center is now, as you said, with outreach and actually connecting with those members to help them. I had them on earlier in the year too to talk about the services at the senior center. So that's good to know. And I'm very excited to hear your connection with the 9-Town Transit, because I agree. For our community and for the whole shoreline, having that ability to use the public transportation is going to be very much advantageous for the community in general, which is wonderful. And I can hear what you're saying about the vaccines, that's a challenge. Any other ideas? And any other ideas as far as downtown goes, besides the sidewalks and the water, which is very interesting to hear about? Any other plans, or will that all depend upon the people that you have looking at the surveys, looking at how that's going?
Basically, yes, looking at the surveys and figuring out what we're going to do with wastewater. That's our biggest challenge. We've committed monies for doing some consulting work. Where that's all going to come out, I do not know. I don't have to tell you, Mary, and all of our listeners, that the retail business is a real challenge these days, whether it's in Westbrook and most of our stores around the town center retail. So encouraging people to come there, even if we develop this, which we have to have, is some place to put the wastewater, is going to be a challenge. Our Westbrook outlets, for example, they're not filled to capacity, although they're doing a great job of trying to get business to come there. But retail is going to be a major issue. Let me talk about this more in terms of the state of Connecticut, what I would call a limitation to Westbrook and to our future. Right now in Connecticut, in the age cohort of people educated, that is with college degrees, from age 27 to 44, there's a net migration of people out of Connecticut. There's lots of reasons for that, but mostly it's financial. They're not the jobs in manufacturing there used to be. Housing is still very expensive. So one of the major challenges that we have, not just at Westbrook, for this state, is to encourage people to stay here. We have great universities. We have great recreational things. It's a fantastic state. And let's go back to your opening phrase, and I couldn't agree with you more. One of the reasons that Westbrook is called the jewel of the shoreline is because I believe we have all those services that should keep people here and keep them engaged. If you think about the phrase, geography is destiny, and I like to talk about that a lot. Think about the geography of Westbrook. Settled in 1635, one of our selectmen, John Hall, has a farm here that's been in that family since the King of England deeded that land to his family. We have about 20 square miles that define the perimeters of Westbrook. Almost 20% of that land right now, that land is in conservation. So we have all the things that we need to have as a jewel of the shoreline. A great geography, you can be on the Sound, and 5 minutes later you can be up in farming country. There's something for everybody here, and that's what makes me, I think, very optimistic about this town, despite what I'm saying to you are some of the limitations for the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, it's that was very well said. I think that really does put the highlight and the spotlight on wonderful things that we have to offer in Westbrook too. And you mentioned a bit, I just wanted to touch base, you mentioned a bit about the outlets, and I know that everyone's doing their part to try to bring business in, to try to, as people now say, pivot and do something different, whether they've brought in crafts and markets and things like that. So I know that we're all trying, but Mr. Bishop, I want to thank you for joining our show. And I guess it sounds like, as you mentioned, the volunteers of Westbrook are so important to helping support everything we do here. So for someone to find out about an opportunity to volunteer, would that best go through the website, Westbrook website, to look for commissions?
Come to the website. I can assure you that come to me, the first thing I would do is pick up the phone, talk to that person, get them involved in a board of commission, do everything we can. The volunteers are just indispensable in Westbrook.
Great, great. Well, I'd like to thank you once again, Mr. Noel Bishop, First Selectman of Westbrook, and thank you for joining us, and I hope you tune in again for Sure Things. Bye for now.
Thank you, Mary. You have a good day.
You
Goodbye.
too. Thank you.